Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. It's a Saturday morning and as always, great to be with you and great interviews as always lined up for you. We're going to start off by talking about something which is pretty unusual, something pretty new on the horizon. It's called Kinderkinetics. Let's understand what's it about. Why is it important in the lives of our children? Well, let's understand what exactly is this new modality as far as children and their well-being is concerned. To talk to us about Kinderkinetics is Professor Dane Coetzee. She hails all the way from Potch, and that of course is on the western side of our part of the world, Western Gauteng, I should imagine. Stay with us, a very, very interesting subject, and we're going to try and unpack as much as we can. Professor, good morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege being here.
Thank you so much for coming in all the way from Potchefstroom to talk about something that I think is very fascinating and I should imagine very, very important in this day and age of technology. But before we unpack Kinderkinetics, who is Professor Coetzee? Why does she have such a keen interest in this modality? And I understand you're teaching it at university.
Yes, I am. Julia, so my way of coming here, I started studying human movement science way back when, in 2000. And then I did my honours in Kinderkinetics at the Northwest University Potchefstroom campus. After that, I came back to Joburg, had a little bit work as a visual therapist with an optometrist, and I decided I wanted to further my studies. I went back to Potchefstroom. I did my master's degree in Kinderkinetics and I did my PhD in Kinderkinetics.
Wow.
And then I was appointed to a permanent position as a lecturer at the Northwest University, and the rest is history. I'm still there. I'm still teaching, and with that as well, I'm also busy with the practical side as well, teaching the students how to work hands-on. So I'm not just teaching, I'm also working with the children, showing the students how to do that.
You must be one of a kind in our country. I'm sure you're the only professor in this field of work.
No. At this stage, we have two professors. Okay. It's me and Prof Ep24, but I'll talk a little bit later about her. She started this whole profession. And then we've got a few doctor degree students as well in this area of study.
So it's going to become a modality or a standalone as far as the medical fraternity is concerned. It seems to be something that's going to become almost a permanent fixture as far as the well-being of children are concerned, support structures to be put in place for children. So what type of children are we looking at? I know you refer to mobility, but I'm also thinking perhaps children that were involved in accidents and they've lost mobility in one of their limbs. Let's look at the similarities or the differences in other similar modalities like physiotherapy, like occupational therapy. Where and how does Kinderkinetics play a role? And it almost sounds like kindergarten, so I'm wondering where the play therapy of this whole this whole concept comes into the picture.
Okay, so first of all, Kinderkinetics focus on the gross motor development of the child. So the fundamental skills, which is locomotor skills, running, hopping, the stability skills, which is balance, where you have to balance on one leg, so dynamic, and static, where you have to walk, let's say heel or toe, and manipulation skills, where I catch and throw and kick balls. So we work gross motor. We closely work together with occupational therapists and physios. If we can't do anything for the child, let's say for bringing back, when they were in a car accident, they're first of all going to go to your physios, and then if we need to work on the motor skills, they will come back to us and we will work with that. With the occupational therapy, they usually focus on sensory integration skills, where we don't work with that. That's not our scope of practice. So we will refer back to them if we see there is sensory integration problems with that child. So we like to work interdisciplinary so that the child that we see in front of us will be developed as a well-being, as a total being. So, but we focus on gross motor development.
So you focus on gross motor development. We talk about the occupational therapist who works on the sensory skills.
Yes.
Then who works on the fine motor skills? I'm also wondering about a biokineticist here.
No, the occupational therapists also work with fine motor skills.
Okay.
So we prefer, if there is handwriting problems, we also refer back to OT. There is bios working with children, but this is our we work with gross motor, and we work with children.
Particularly in children.
In children. So your bios would especially work with adults. And people, let's say they have a heart attack and they had to start working again to become physical fit, you will go to your OT. If there is any, let's say they broke a bone, then your OTs your bios will also help with get the person back and to mobilize them and start to get physical active again. But we focus, like I said, on children, and we focus mostly on your gross motor skills and to develop that part, the foundation, so that everybody else can build onto that.
How new is this discipline? Because I must admit, it's the first time I've heard of it. And when would I take my child to a kinderkineticist?
Okay, actually, Kinderkinetics is 18 years old.
Okay.
It started,
pretty new.
Yeah, pretty new. So it started 18 years ago when Prof Pino realized the profession started basically when PE was taken out, physical education was taken out of the schools. And the children weren't given the proper physical activity lessons, the motor development was lacked. So out of her PhD, she developed this profession, and she saw with the results that with your physical activity and motor development programs, you can improve a child that has motor delays as well as a child that had actually good motor skills to improve that as well. So because there was a lack of people, especially physical education teachers, that specialize in the movement and physical activity, this profession was born.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at a relatively able child who has no problems whatsoever. How are they going to benefit if they enroll into a course like this? I'm wondering, would it give them the edge as far as sporting abilities is concerned? And going forward, is there a place for sportsmen, professional sportsmen, to also hone their skills by attending sessions, to improve gross motor skills?
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm just quickly going to explain what type of programs we have, and then I will answer your question regarding to that. We've got a few programs that we teach the students at the university to go and present if they are finished and registered kinderkineticists. We start with the babies, 0 to 24 months, where we do a stimulation program with them, and we focus a lot on the sensory and the auditory and the visual and the motor skills.
Why do we need to be doing that? Isn't this supposed to come almost automatically as far as babies and children are concerned?
Yes, it is supposed to come automatically, but because of the modern society we live in and technology that's actually taking over, a lot of parents that needs to go to work. They don't have much time to spend with the children. So
to keep them active.
Yes, to keep them active. That's why we need something like this to make sure that our children's motor development, and starting from an early age, is on par. So we start with our babies, and then we go to our 2 to 7 year old with our preschool, where we focus on perceptual motor skills. And we work on gross motor skills, which is balance, spatial awareness, body awareness. We work with coordination, we work with manipulation skills and rhythm and timing. With that, we also focus on your fundamental movement skills, which is, like I said earlier, your stability, your locomotor and your motor manipulation skills. With that, if that is in place, the child will also be better performing in school, because as we know, research showed that children with gross motor delays also have a problem in academic skills, and it will also help with, if they go forward, with their sports skills.
Can we just stop there at
Yes.
academic skills? What is the research showing us? I'm trying to find the link between the two. The one is very physical and the one has to do with the mind.
Yes.
What is it about our children who do not move or who are not active enough, who have problems with balance, etc., that it's impacting on their academics? Like children who, I know in the lower grades, if they don't cope while at school, they are referred immediately to an occupational therapist. How does that help the child unlock whatever is going wrong or locked in the brain?
All right. So if you look at the development of a child, you usually start with the basis, the foundation of the child's house, I will call that. And the foundation of a child's house is the fundamental movement skills. And if they struggle with balance, they will struggle to sit up straight and to focus. So if you struggle with your balance and your low muscle tone, there's so many things going on in that poor child's body and brain that they just need to try to sit up straight in the chair, that they cannot focus and they cannot listen to the teacher. And if with that, then the handwriting will be also impact. So that's why we thoroughly believe, make the foundation strong, fix the foundation where there's problems, and then the academic skills will also move as you go along in the building blocks of the development of the child.
Okay, let's go for our first ad break. The lovely Professor Dane Coetzee from Potch University is here talking to us about Kinderkinetics. Fascinating subject, and getting me thinking about these phases that we skip in our children's lives. And even if your child is able-bodied, even if he or she is coping well at school, perhaps this is an alternative modality you want to put in place in their lives just to give them the edge over their peers. Please stay with us. We're going for an ad break and we'll continue this fascinating discussion. Kinderkinetics is what we're talking about with Professor Dane Coetzee. She's from Potch University, and we're also going to find out a little later on in the program the link between all the other disciplines, for example occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and also biokinetics. So do stay tuned. You were explaining about the building blocks to the children and why, even if it is an able-bodied child, how this can benefit him or her going forward.
Definitely. So after that, like I said, in the 2 to 7 year age group, we work with the perceptual motor, where we work on the gross motor skills. So, and what I was saying is, let's say for balance problems, that's how it can influence their writing skills. And if there is low muscle tone as well, the writing skills. If there is a spatial awareness problem, it will also have an impact on the math skills.
Can you explain spatial awareness?
Okay. Spatial awareness is where am I in the position in space. So that is, let's say if we work with a child, is he or she must know where am I, and he or she must know where are you in space. So activity that we will do to improve spatial awareness, we will do within something, go over the red block, underneath, go left, go right, so that they can learn the different sides and where in space they need to move. And that's very important for your maths and for reading, because they need to know to start from the left to the right. Mm-hmm. So that's why we work on that to make preventative. So that's the preventative side of us, to make sure in our profession, to make sure that everything is right. So if they go forward, there won't be any problems.
Dané, let me ask you this question. I might be digressing a bit, but I've been told that with little children, when they reach the crawling age, we as moms want them to reach their milestones way sooner than they actually should be. And we think it's a great achievement, or it's an indicator as to how bright this child is. But we know that that's not true. Also, those moms who are very guilty of plonking their kids into a walker because they want them to start walking quicker. How is that disadvantaging the child?
Okay, so very important. Thank you for that question. We are developed to move through certain milestones. Okay, starting from tummy time, then we need to sit, then we start to crawl, then we stand up, then we walk. by doing all your milestones, you are basically wiring your brain. So all the pathways that need to be wired are getting wired, and everything are being put in place for the child to learn himself and to position him or herself in the space where they need to move. You will also, when they start crawling, you are working with your bilateral integration, so left and right sides and up and down. Top part, bottom part of your body needs to work together. And all of that is where all the pathways in your brain are starting to develop. And they go forward and say, okay, this is where I'm going to bump into each other. And they start to organize themselves around the room. The crawling is very important. It also helps with your muscle tone. Okay, your muscle tone.
Because you're exercising all the time.
Exercising, and when you start to crawl, you're also improving your shoulder girth and that strength. And that's where we want, and a lot of babies are skipping their crawling stage, and we want to bring them back to that and say, okay, let's do that, let's fix that, and then we move forward. So it's very important that parents do make sure that their child go through all the milestones that needs to be put through.
Another question, again, may not be directly related, or it may be. What about babies, you know, the 0 to 2 or 3 year olds that do not necessarily meet their milestones timeously? Is that a concern for moms? And children, let's say an 18-year-old child that hasn't started speaking yet, talking yet, what should moms do to speed up the vocab? What is going wrong with that child? Why is that child delayed?
There can be a lot of things going wrong. So if, let's say, the speech, if the child don't speak, I would say take them to a speech therapist. Let them evaluate and see what's wrong, because maybe the child can't hear correctly. Maybe there's something differently wrong there. But what we do, if a child comes to us or a parent comes to us and say, my child isn't walking at the proper age that they need to do, we will evaluate them with international standardized test batteries to see exactly how far behind it is. Is it a problem? Isn't it? Because we do get late developers and we do get early developers. So depending on where the child is and what the child can do or cannot do, we will evaluate and see how we can help them. Most of the time we go back and we start with the intervention program, helping them to improve if it's just a plain motor delay and not something else, so that the OT can work on or your speech therapist can work on. So we look at that and we refer as well. So it depends on what's wrong with the child. So it's difficult to say if the child comes in and it can't walk, it's X, Y, Z. So you go through a few test batteries and then you say, okay, no, you need to go to this person or that person.
Let's say a parent is presented with such a problem. You know, what would be their first port of call? Their general GP, the pediatrician, or do they take the child immediately to an OT?
Once again, like I said, it depends. I think your pediatrician is a good place to start, because maybe there's something else. Maybe it's a neurological problem. And after that, then they can, if it's a motor delay, so they don't walk and it's not a neurological problem, we can evaluate them, or he or she can take the baby to, the mom can take the baby to a OT, which can also evaluate and see where they are and what they can do. But we work with babies from 0 to 24 months, and we also, and older, like I said earlier, and we test them with, like I said, international test batteries to see where their motor development is and their milestones, where they are with the milestones.
Now, we stopped at age 7. What happens thereafter? What is it that you test for? What is it that you look out for? And what sort of interventions do you put in place?
Okay, so after age 7, we have a sports development program. So with that, we also help, again, if we do promoting or preventative, we work with the children in groups and we teach them different sport skills so that they have a wide range of sports skills that they can go further on. And we make sure that the fundamental motor skills is solid and they reach the mature stage, so that we can start going into the sports-specific phase and specializing in certain sports skills. We also have, and that's from 8 till 12, and then we have a wellness program for boys and girls from 10 to 13 years old.
Oh, wow, and what's that all about?
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, we are very we like that program. So we split the boys and the girls at this age. The boys, we call it 4 Boys program, and we focus there on their wellness. We focus on their coordination, their strength training. So we start to do a little bit of strength training with them, but with own body weight, and we teach them how, because boys that age wants to go to the gym. So we just start teaching them the correct way to do it. We teach them the love of movement, how to stay active and how to enjoy it. And then the girls, we go aerobic dancing. That's our main focus with the girls. So we teach them different dances, and we want them
it's really exercises to music, obviously.
Yes.
And you're truly working the body, all the muscles in the body.
Yeah, and we're trying to improve their physical fitness
and
their physical activity. And Kinderkinetics, all our programs focus on fun. We don't want the child to know they are exercising. We want them to have fun, and while they're having fun, they are exercising.
It's called Kinderkinetics for a good reason. It's really for children up to the age of 13. If children are not exposed to Kinderkinetics, what is the worst case scenario as far as their physical and their academic outcome? What's it going to look like? And is this now going to be offered at mainstream schools throughout the country? Because it sounds like this is exactly what we need in schools.
Yes. So if a child, there's no motor delays, they can go on, but we want to work with like I said, we work with typical and atypical, but most of our work is with typical developed children. So we want them to come to us to help to optimize the development. But if there is needs, if there's a gross motor delay in the child, we can also work with them, and we work one-on-one, specialized programs. We evaluate the child and we work one-on-one with them. If the motor delays are not fixed or looked after, the child can become more, go back more, so his motor skills can deteriorate. Other thing that also is very important is they tend to retract themselves from the community. They don't want to play
isolate themselves.
Yeah, isolate. They don't want to play with their friends anymore because they can't. Or the friends doesn't want to pick them because they can't kick a ball. They can't catch a ball. So they are getting, those the people that's also usually starting to get overweight because they don't exercise, and it's just a worst effect, snowballing effect.
And apart from overweight, they start developing a complex.
Yes.
They don't feel good about themselves, and then the self-esteem takes a knock. They perfect targets for bullies, and the repercussions are absolutely endless.
Yes, it is. So that's why we're trying to help these children as quickly as possible to make sure that their self-esteem is good, to make sure that if we also work with overweight and obese children, and we're helping them to start to be physical active and start to improve their motor skills and feel a little bit better about themselves, and then they start to go back and their friends are starting to pick them again, to play with them again. So it's very important for us, the total well-being of the child, the social, the emotional, the physical, everything to work together.
Absolutely. Time for our next ad break. Professor Dane Coetzee is here talking about Kinderkinetics, and as you can hear, a very, very important modality that has to be reintroduced into society. It started up 18 years ago, and it certainly has a place in our society, very especially if you find that your child is lacking in one of the areas that we've touched on during the interview. Don't go away. We're going to be coming back right after the ad break and continue this very important discussion. Kinderkinetics is what we're talking about with Professor Dane Coetzee. Kinderkinetics is what we're talking about. Fascinating subject, and I think all moms and dads should think about investing in this modality, this new modality for their children. just before we went to the ad break, Dané, you spoke about up to the age of 13. There's all of these support interventions in place. And to introduce children back into the world of play, of fitness, of fun, but in a very specialized way, which is going to maximize their abilities going forward. What happens after the age of 13? Let's assume this child doesn't get involved in sport whatsoever. What's going to happen to that child?
Well, that's where we're trying. Luckily, physical education is back into schools, and hopefully that's going to be improved, the way that they teach physical education. So hopefully the children is being picked up there. But that is a big concern, and usually the biokinetics take over on that age, because Kinderkinetics is very specialized on the child and getting the foundation right and learning them the love to move. So usually after that age, it's either they go to the bios that help them, or they go to sports teams where they can exercise.
Or a sports scientist for that matter.
Or a sports scientist, yes.
What about, I've been told, and I don't know, you as a kinderkineticist, I know you don't work with adults or geriatrics, but just explain to us the importance of trying to walk barefoot, little children and older people as well, for as regularly as you can. What's that doing for your general health and well-being?
Okay, I think when you walk barefoot on the grass on the ground, you feel it. You feel that sensation. So all your proprioceptors in your body get fired up. So if you walk, you can feel, you can actually feel the grass, and you can bring the senses together and all your sensory integration working together, and that helps you to improve when you walk forward, when you are barefoot. It also helps with your position, how you put your foot down, how you walk, how you, with your shoes, it can also limit your movement. So I prefer to be barefoot. Usually I'm barefoot. Yeah, so that's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, it is a healthy option. We're not saying go barefoot all the time, but for as much as you can. Yes. Do you have stats indicating the importance of this work?
Yes, we do. We actually published quite a lot of work. We have a few articles on the effect of a kinderkinetic program on the obesity status and the motor skills of obese and overweight children, which showed that most of the group improved. We also have research indicating that the perceptual motor skills program on preschoolers improved their motor skills as well as their perceptual and their cognitive skills. And we also have where we can see if the motor skills are delayed, how does it impact the academic skills. Sure. So there's a lot of research out there stating that Kinderkinetics is helping with the motor skills and with the child's cognitive and their self-image. And if they are participating, that's how they can improve that as well.
And I guess if you've taken your child through this program from birth, by the time they reach their teens, 13, they will have such a love for movement that they're going to naturally adopt a sport that they like, and they're going to remain very, very sportingly active to their natural health and well-being. That being said, how do people watching us this morning want to get their kids now involved in a program like this? It's not offered at mainstream schools yet. Where and how do they get their kids involved?
Okay, so we do have a few kinderkineticists that are appointed by the school, so that some of them are in mainstream schools, but a lot of we've got about 64 practices over South Africa and Namibia, and even one in Dubai.
Wow.
So they can either go to our website, which is www.kinderkinetics.co.za, where they will find a whole list of our practices in this, and then they can contact the kinderkineticist in that area, or they can contact SAPIC office, and we can put them into the right direction where they can go to a kinderkineticist practicing in their area, which is going to primary schools or which do present schools at some of the pre-primary schools where they can get involved in.
If you have a child that is very sporty, let's assume that he's a great footballer, cricketer, whatever the case may be, has been doing relatively well up to now, but now both you and the coach pick up a problem. Would you say that your first port of call should be a kinderkineticist? Would they be able to assess and see what's going wrong and then get the child back on track?
Yes, I think so. So I think you can contact a kinderkineticist. We will assess them with our test battery to see exactly where's the problem, and we can improve that. We can work with the coach to make sure that the physical fitness or the strength is being improved, and then he or she can go back to where they were.
There were 2 or 3 awareness programs in April. There's also something called Play the Art That Makes Me Smart, yes. Brilliant, and Move to Improve, and the National Awareness Week. Talk to us about that and how people can get involved going forward.
All right, so the whole idea of the National Awareness Week for Kinderkinetics were we chose April because April is part of the Physical Activity Month, and the 6th of April is Physical Activity World Day. So the week that we chose was the week after the school started. We had a theme for every day, and the whole week were about physical and activity and how play the art that makes you smart. So the pamphlet we sent out to the parents, and we also did it on Facebook, were to indicate if you are physically active, how it will improve your academic skills. So and Ready Steady Active was also the recommendations that we want the parents to know how many minutes a day your child must be physically active to make sure that they are healthy. So we just wanted to go and make sure that around physical activity and how to a parent to improve that and what's the benefits and to the health, to the child, to the self-esteem. So that was the whole idea with that. So we also, like I said, did it on social media. We posted it on Facebook. All the kinderkineticists in South Africa handed it out to their parents. We went to people in the parking lots and say, hey, do you know this? Look at this, read this. So that's what we are trying to do, and we're going to do it next year again because
Wonderful.
We also want the physical activity part to be part of the daily life. So that's why we are doing that.
And of course, you indicated to me off air, this is simply because technology has overtaken our lives. Children are not as active as they ought to be, and we need this intervention to make them moving again. That being said, with about 2 or a bit minutes to wrap up time, throughout the program, the one thing that's been going through my mind is the autistic child. How can a program like this benefit that child?
Okay, that's our atypical child. That's a remedial part that we do. We've got 4 or 5 test batteries that we use to evaluate children to see exactly where are their lack of motor skills. And with autism, we do have autistic children that we work with, and we do get results with that, and especially the motor,
good results,
good results, and especially the motor skills. And we do have 1 or 2 master degree students that already published their dissertations on results on how they improve children with autism. So we work with definitely the motor skills and how they actually open and start to be one-on-one, and how they enjoy being just a play. So yes, we do work with children with autism, we work with children with ADHD, we work with children with developmental coordination disorder, like I said, obesity and overweight children, as well as children with just basic lack in motor delays.
Final questions. Let's assume that you didn't get the child from birth, because you are indicating that for maximum results, for a truly well-rounded child, you take the child from birth right up to 13 years old. But let's assume that doesn't happen, and this kid comes to you at age 6, 8, or even 10. Is the child going to benefit, and for how long would they have to be on the program to see some sort of positive results in their lives?
Okay, they can come to us anytime in their childhood, middle childhood, early childhood, they can come to us. When they will see the results, depending on the problem of the child. So we have children that comes to us that within 2 months they can start seeing results, but we also have children coming to us that is within 4, 5, 6, 7 months they only start seeing results. So it depends on the child and the individual needs of the child and where they are how quickly they're going to see results on that.
And can the results still be evident if they just spend 6 months with you and then go off into the world and the parents then perhaps do some work with them? Is that also a doable scenario?
It is a doable scenario, but once again, like I said, Julie, depending on what's wrong with the child.
Of course.
So if there is a lack in the motor development and it's quite severe, it's going to take a little bit longer to rectify that problem. If it's not that severe, it will be easier to go off earlier and go do things on your own at the house.
Now we know kids, if they've had an accident, a broken bone, whatever, that they bounce back pretty quickly. How important is that the right exercise are prescribed for them, and will they get 100% mobility in that particular limb?
Yes, I think the faster, the earlier you start with intervention, the better. But once again, make sure, let's say a child's bone is broken, make sure that your physio saw him first and help him first to make sure that the mobility is back. And then they can come to us and we can help them with the motor skills that they lost to improve that part.
And I should imagine the same scenario with adults who are very sporty, they have a sports injury, they have a fractured bone, etc. Yes. Again, right assessment, probably either physiotherapy or whatever therapy to get that limb back 100% working.
Yeah.
Same rules apply.
Same rules apply.
In closing, the important messages that you want to leave our viewers with today.
I would say make sure your child move. Move. Play with your child. If you don't have the space, take the dog and go and walk with your child. Any activity is good activity. If you cannot do that, make sure that you get to somebody that can help you with the movement, and make sure that your child is physically active, because at the end, if you're physically active, you'll lead a healthy lifestyle.
So it's all about play and movement. Dané, it's been absolutely fabulous having you on the show. Thank you indeed for sharing with us, and all the best to you for the future.
Thank you, Julie. It was a pleasure.
Lovely to have had you here. That was Professor Dane Coetzee talking to us about Kinderkinetics. As I've said first time, I've heard of this modality, but as you can hear, the benefits truly are amazing. And it seems that we've reached that time in our history where we need to get our kids involved in this modality to get the best out of them for their health and well-being going forward. Don't go away. Our next guest is standing by. We're now going to talk finances and how you can be smart with your finances. And welcome back. In studio now we have Gerald Mwandiambira. He is from the South African Savings Institute and he's here to teach us girls all about the value of saving. And of course we are approaching Women's Month and Women's Day. So let's understand the value of money and very especially the value of saving. Gerald, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Always a pleasure. Morning.
Nice to have you here to talk about something that's close to all of our hearts. Money is what makes the world go round. We do know that a lot of troubled marital relationships is because of money problems. So very important for women to understand the value of saving and saving wisely. That being said, let's first understand who's the South African Savings Institute, who's Gerald, how did the two of you come together, and why are you here talking to me about the importance of saving, in this instance not only for women, but for generally all South Africans?
Well, I think the first thing is the South African Savings Institute is a non-profit organization which was set up in 2001. It was an idea which was driven by the then Minister of Finance, Trevor Manuel. And the reasoning behind having a savings institute was, if you looked at the countries in Asia which were performing well economically, they had high savings ratios where people needed to save domestically and the economies grew. And what the thinking was, if South Africa starts to save domestically and keeping our money within South Africa, we can grow our economy and not depend as much on foreign direct money. which we do right now. And that's what the thinking was behind the Savings Institute. The Savings Institute has three primary pillars. The first pillar we do is advocacy. Now, by advocacy, it means that we stand for the consumer, we speak to business, we speak to government, and we try and get involved in getting ways in which the savings and investment message can get out there. So things like the tax-free savings, we were part of that process to get that to go out. We've got a number of various programs as well around our advocacy, such as Teach Children to Save, as well as a varsity program for young adults. Our other pillar is research, and the research we do is really around what's the behavior of South Africans, what makes us save, what makes us not save, and what are the things which drive us to do what we do when it comes to saving. And obviously, saving and investment, you can't ever divorce the two. The only difference between saving and investment is that investment is much longer term, whereas saving is really you're putting money aside for the short term. And the last pillar we do is consumer education, and that's really why I'm here in terms of saying we started a savings month in 2008, so this is our 10th year, and Savings Month's been going for 10 years, and it's grown from strength to strength, mainly supported by things like social media, because now a lot more people can hear about what savings is and start asking themselves, am I really saving? So that's SASSI in a nutshell. We're supported by the IDC, and every year we work with different sponsors to help us to get the message out there. And fortunately, we've got a banking partner for the next 3 years, Absa Bank, and they will help us during July. But remember, saving is not about July. It's about every day. Personally, I'm a financial planning professional, and for me, this is a calling.
You sound like a numbers guy.
No. For me, it's a non-profit, so this is not a paid opportunity. It's something I do because of the passion I have to empower our people in terms of understanding that without that thing we call money, a lot of things can go wrong. And you hit the nail on the head by saying that besides infidelity, money is the next reason why marriages break up. When families break up, society breaks up, and everything doesn't work. So we need to start looking at saving, especially from children right through to their parents. And because we're talking to ladies, it's important to realize that mothers actually hold a lot of the wisdom around saving, especially when it comes to the children.
Now, when we talk about the Institute, obviously you've spoken about advocacy, you spoke about awareness campaigns, you spoke about young adults being educated, and a whole host more that you're doing. Do you actually put any money behind those campaigns? Can people come to you? I know you're not a bank, so they can't come to you for a loan or they can't deposit money with you. But can they come to you for financial advice and direction as to where perhaps even a young person wanting to start up a business and think that perhaps you would be able to steer him or her in the right direction?
Okay, as a savings institute, we don't actually offer any advice. We're not registered with the Financial Service Conduct Authority, but we work with different partners, and that's where we can sometimes just point you in the right direction, where if you do need assistance or advice, we can point you to one of our partners who we might be working with on different and various campaigns. And that's really how we operate, where we work with different partners on different campaigns in different seasons. So yes, we can assist, but no, we can't do it ourselves internally. Normally, we will put you in touch with one of our partners.
So here I'm thinking South Africa with X amount of 7 to 9 million unemployed youth, child-headed households, a lot of women working, just trying to keep their families together, who may lament the fact that there isn't enough money to put bread on the table. Where and how are we going to save?
I think we need to get away from that thinking that you don't have the power to save if you don't have enough. Saving is about whenever money passes through your hands, at that point you have the opportunity to save. And saving is actually a conscious decision. It's important to realize that whenever you do receive money, put something aside. Yes, it's a relative to how much you get, but we can't say that we're waiting for having to have a mountain of money before we start saving, because ultimately the people who don't save with little don't save with much. It's the same principle behind giving. You don't wait to give when you've got everything. It goes hand in hand. It's the same type of behavior where to release, you need to release out of your heart relative to what you have. And to save, you need to save out of your heart relative to what you have.
I have no doubt that the South African Savings Institute has done a lot of research into saving patterns, not only in South Africa, but all around the world. What is it that makes you a person who thinks about the rainy day? What is it about those people who spend even what they don't have, meaning that they, indebted to merchants, etc., because they're in so much of credit? Is it a certain type of personality we're looking at? Is it about men versus women? Are women wired differently? Yes, I think we are. Are they better savers? Are they more prone to think of a rainy day, the future perhaps, and perhaps support their partners into a very healthy saving pattern?
I think it's all those things. I think there's a cultural element, for example. So if you look at the tax-free savings accounts, for example, the take-up, it's very strong in KwaZulu-Natal, in KZN. And it's mainly because of the Indian community and the Asian community there who save quite strongly. And all these things, you have to start looking at the dynamics which drive that savings behavior. It's also a lot easier to save when you have communities which stay together. So in a community where you live together, where families are not in a rush to move into different households, it creates a platform to save. Because ultimately, if we have a big home, we don't, mom, dad, 3 children and their wives, and it's big and it's accommodating everyone.
You're not replicating expenses.
You're not, because, and that creates the engine to save. Hence you find even amongst the Muslim community, people can save because there is that cultural element of let's look after each other. And when people are looked after by others, when they have a base to start saving, at the point when they want to move out, they do it at the right time. In our culture, in terms of the African and the Black African culture, there's this whole competitive element of people want to be far away from each other. They want to show each other what they're doing. And to me, that's exactly what you're saying. We're replicating expenses where 3 children who could be staying in the same house because the bedrooms were always there. They can bring in extra people, but for a while and a season, they can save. And that's what we are lacking in the vast majority of South Africa, in that we are replicating expenses and we're clearly not creating enough opportunities to save. Yes, unemployment is there, but out of the people who are working, you have a 72% household debt to income ratio, which means that people are surviving on 25% of the money they earn. There's also the gender, which is true in terms of men versus women. But in South Africa, it's quite interesting. Women tend to actually be more qualified and educated than men and earn more money. So the women are the real savers. If you had to look at the men versus women, actually most people think women don't save. It's actually the other way around. Women tend to save better because men buy expensive things which they don't think about in the long term. So all these things have a place in our society, but we need to start understanding that if you don't put money aside for a rainy day, if you don't plant that seed which can grow, you will never have something to eat in the future. And that's how basic we need to start considering and how important savings is.
Okay, let's go for our first ad break. Gerald from the South African Savings Institute is in studio talking about savings, the importance of savings, not only for you and I in our homes, in our little nuclear families, but for the country as a whole. So stay with me. When we come back, we're going to ask him how we introduce the culture of saving in our children and a whole host more. Mwandiambira is my guest. We're talking savings, and he represents the South African Savings Institute. Just before we went to the ad break, I would be correct in saying that let's assume every 3rd or 4th household saves in South Africa, has a culture of saving. How's it benefiting the rest of us?
Well, it benefits us because the money we save, ultimately we put it into banks. Banks onwardly use that money for for institutions, we build roads, we build hospitals. Government uses that money which we put there from our savings. So that's how it benefits the whole country. If the country is just consuming, we're actually not helping ourselves because we're not putting away anything aside. So when the foreigners decide they don't like South Africa, which time and time they do, the rand goes in a different direction, all our expenses go up, and already we're in that cycle right now where the economy is challenged in terms of we're going through a tough economic cycle, 27% unemployment, fuel prices reaching the sky. You've got electricity, it's going up as well. So everything which we need to live is becoming more difficult. And yes, it means that saving should actually be more important now because we don't know what tomorrow may hold. We don't know if the rand will get better or worse. And it's better for us now to start concentrating our wealth and start saying, if you have a scenario where you're living away from home and you're financially challenged, it's not a bad thing to start thinking about going back home, getting refuge, rebuilding your and protecting the wealth you have now. And I think that's a lot of the problem we have, pride.
Well, I must tell you that the trend overseas in the European countries is that we know that when European children reach the age of 16 or 18, they get kicked out of their homes, the parental home, to go and find their feet and become independent. That tide is now turning abroad. Those kids are coming back. People who've left home in their 18s are coming back home for the very reason that you've outlined here.
In their 30s.
The cost of living is way too high, and the only way to be able to lead a relatively good quality of life is to move in back with your parents.
I think that's how we should look at it, because if we had to look at other cultures such as Judaism or the Jews, it takes 3 generations to create wealth. So you need to realize
Explain that three-generational
the 3
thing.
generations, it's really around understanding that the first generation, okay, let's look at it from a woman's point of view. As a woman, when you give birth to a daughter, the seed for her children is already there, which means that every woman who gives birth to a daughter is actually carrying a grandchild. So that's the principle around you need to create an inheritance for your children's children. So if you look at that particular culture, they actually have the grandparents paying the school fees and looking after the children. The parents are busy doing the same for the next generation.
Okay.
So we actually need a situation where in one household we need to live together and have 3 generations worth of people before we can actually start saying we're wealthy, which speaks to what you're saying, that you must stay at home. There's actually no reason to leave home. You can stay at home with your children, have that 3 generations in one household. Only the 4th generation can start thinking about leaving home.
And sadly, in the African and in the Asian cultures, we become so westernized that we're now following that old European mentality where the moment the kids are 18 years old or newly married, they don't want to live in an extended family situation any longer. They want to move up and set up their own homes.
And that's the sad part. The extended family situation has a commonwealth. The commonwealth means that I will not go hungry. I will not have money for transport to go to work. There will always be someone supporting me. Now we've gone into little islands where people are struggling on their own.
But apart from finances, Gerald, look at the support structure in other ways, emotional and other support structures that are in place when you live in an extended family.
That wisdom which comes from the grandmother and the grandfather. Absolutely. They are no longer relevant now. But if you think about it from a woman's perspective, to teach a child about children, you need to simply get them 3 principles, 3 money boxes. In the first money box, you tell your child, in this box, whatever you want, you save for. Shoes, bicycle, toys. You've taught them principle 1, which is saving. In the second money box, you want to teach them a very important part of money, which is giving. Okay, so in the second box, you actually say at the end of the year or at a certain date, we take this box and we give it away. Whatever you've saved, give it. Because one of the reasons we can't save is we all feel we are less than enough. But until you appreciate that there's someone who actually has nothing, you can't save, because you think that you are the one who's at the bottom of of life, and you're not. And then the third one, you want to obviously have your spiritual box where you say, this is spiritual giving to what I believe in. Okay, so with those three principles, you start having a scenario where you're building a rounded person who's young and understands, if I want something, I save for it, which means that you will never ever encounter debt, because you understand that if I want something, I save for it. In the second one, you'll always be rounded in realizing there's someone less fortunate than you. And in the third one, you're always calling on the higher power for help when things don't work out. And it's these principles we need mothers to teach children. And ultimately, mothers teach sons. Those sons become better men become better husbands and fathers. And we start to rebuild the fabric of family and society, which we've lost. Because if we want to follow this Western system, they're showing us it doesn't work. In America, children are not leaving home at all. So in now you have 40-something and says, I don't need to leave. Why? And we need to ask ourselves that question. Why do you need to leave home? Because ultimately, if you have a family compound and everyone has their space, what's the rush? What's the need? Rather create wealth so that you can start moving when you're ready.
I think our youngsters are looking for what they term as that freedom, the elusive freedom. But be that as it may, you touched on a very important principle, because we, as Muslims in Islam, we have to give something called zakat, and of course a whole host of other charities. And if we start teaching our children from that tender age the 3 money box concept, they'll have it down to a pat. And of course we're teaching them responsibility.
Yes. Oh yeah, the responsibility is when you're saving,
yes,
you're doing chores in the house.
Absolutely.
So it's also very important that you don't just give children. Children must earn. So with that saving box, you're teaching them to do chores around the house. If you're running a business, they're working in the business, and also they're learning the family values. We need to ask ourselves, when we go home and we sit with our children, what is our family value? Is it a PlayStation? Is it mom, dad doing things and no one actually sitting together around the meal? There's power in cooking together. There's power in having meals together. And it's one of those things they even say, have dinner at a table. When was the last time family gathered? And we do it once or twice a year. Actually, it should be daily, because
Absolutely.
It's that time when we get to discuss these things.
Quality time.
It's quality family time. And I know as women, it's difficult to get husbands to sit at a table. But at least once a week, make sure you get that husband, even on one day, to sit there with the children. How was your week?
How was your day?
How was your day? How is it with money? Because when children now understand how money works and their money boxes are full, you then take them to the bank. And then in the bank, yes, there's Al Baraka and the Islamic banks. You will teach them the values which
Absolutely.
go with your religion, with why we bank a certain way, why we have Takaful insurance, why we operate in a certain way in our belief. That way they can now connect everything to you putting that card or swiping in the supermarket to where the money came from. Because a lot of the children today don't even understand that when you put money into a card, it's actually money you've put there before.
Absolutely. And they think, and I think we give our children too much too soon, and they expect, we create this expectancy in them that everything is at a push of a button. But coming back to responsibility, apart from the responsibility of chores to earn money, the responsibility for your fellow human being, your second money box that you're going to dispense to the neediest of the needy, the third money box, which is, as the Christian people would say, paying your tithe.
It's your tithe.
As we as Muslims say, we're paying our zakat once a year,
Yes.
10% of whatever, our assets, etc. Let's look at the issue around, we're talking about the importance of saving. A lot of people, and you talk about tax-free saving, we know that it's not as healthy as it should be. It's you can save up to 33,000
33,000 a year,
per person in a family. But how does that compare with perhaps a really good insurance policy?
Look, I think if you look at it from a financial planning point of view, I'd say you need to save 30% of whatever passes through your hands. And that 30% is excluding your zakah, it's excluding your tithe. That's 30% of wealth kept. So if you receive 100 Rand on any day, 30 Rand must be saved or just kept for a rainy day. From the rest, then you do all the other responsibilities. If you start instilling that in a child who's never earned money from day one, it's very easy. I looked at my daughter the other day, and she does 10% of everything, and she's got 800 Rand in her money boxes, which means her economy is 8,000 Rand. What is your economy, and how able are you to deal with a financial shock? As a family, if you were told to come up with 10,000 Rand today, how easy would it be for you to come up with that money? And the sad part about it is even family households which earn 50, 60,000 cannot absorb a shock of as little as 10,000 Rand. They have to go and borrow or ask family and friends. Also, that's important. Family and friends. It's important for us to also have those money conversations in family and friend situations. In South Africa, they have this thing called the stokvel.
All right, hold the thought on the stokvel, a very important aspect that we need to look into, and also buying with plastic money, credit cards, all of that and more coming after the break. Gerald, who is a financial planner, he's with the South African Savings Institute, talking about the importance of saving, very especially for us girls with Women's Month around the corner, how we can play a pivotal role, not only in our own homes, but in the economy of South Africa. Welcome back. We're talking savings with the South African Savings Institute, the importance of savings and how we can make a meaningful difference, not only in our homes, we as women, but also in the country's economy. You touched on something really important, the importance of stokvels. We know it, you know, in the past it's been very, very unstructured, but it worked, and it worked very, very well, to the point where banks are now institutionalizing stokvels. Talk to us more about it.
The stokvel is again around that community spirit. When you're a community, it's easy for you to say, as a group of women in this neighborhood who believe at the end of the year we want to do something, why don't we save money? And every month people put money together towards groceries or whatever it is. It could even be school fees. It could even be to give to the less fortunate at the end of the year. But you're simply pooling the resources of more than one person, because when two hands come together, you have the power of two. And when you can actually have family stokvels where you actually say, okay, we totally understand all you young children and young adults want to leave this house. However, we don't believe in debt. Therefore, we will save, and you buy each other. You buy homes and in the community, and you can do things for each other and build. And that was the power of the stokvel, and that's what built all the banks. A bank is nothing but a very big stokvel.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing around the insurance, and that's what we need to do now. As we look at women and Women's Month, we need to realize that often as a woman you feel defeated because you can't control your head of the house, your husband. And a lot of women, I also understand in Women's Month, cry out and say, I wish I could get my husband to understand how to save and how to build these things. All I can say to those mothers is, you can make a change. Look down, your son. Because sometimes you have not been blessed with a husband who appreciates all the values of creating wealth and all the good things we want now. But you can make a change instantly by taking it down to your son, where you're going to build a strong young man who's going to understand that in my mother's house we saved.
Absolutely.
And if you get a young man, a young woman who in their mother's house saving happened naturally, already you've moved to the next level. So I think also we need to appreciate, yes, that is the challenge, especially because African culture, just like Muslim culture, the head of the house has the say. And sometimes he doesn't always agree with the right decisions. And often you need to then say, how do I console myself? You can console yourself by helping your children to understand these principles and to grow up. And often when we see our children doing things better than us, actually we have a change of heart. So even that man who's hard-hearted towards saving, if he can see your son and your daughter doing it and doing it well, he will have to soften his stance and say, you know what, my wife, this thing works. How can we also do it for ourselves? And often the biggest question is when they come and say, Mom, Dad, are you saving?
All right, what about, and we've been told this time and time again, and as a financial planner, I'm sure you'd agree, and also give us many more reasons for why we should not get caught into the trap of using plastic money, and that is credit cards. What is it costing us, and how can we be more money smart as far as saving on those plastic cards? Credit cards and, of course, loyalty programs.
The sad part about a plastic card is that it benefits only the people who issue it. They're doing it for profit, to make money. So when they give you the money, everything you pay back on top of what you actually borrowed is going to someone's profit, someone's lifestyle. What we need to be doing more of is realizing that you can buy things on lay-by. So, but just by delaying yourself those 3, 4, 5 months, you'll have that same thing with no debt. You won't be a bond servant. I mean, if you even go into the past, into history, they talk about bond servants where they had special prisons for people who owed.
Yes,
who had
absolutely.
debt. And we can't realize that you can't live with debt, because you can't be a servant to another man because of you consuming. And the sad part about it is those swiping cards, it's always things which aren't there to be shown the next day. It's food, instant, it's gone. Clothes, they tear, they get smaller, and they get out of fashion.
They get out of fashion.
So we need to realize that you should avoid plastic money at all accounts in terms of credit, because credit by its nature is the opposite of saving. And the only people who often we say it's justified to get to borrow, it's a business, because a business needs money to grow, but that's for the business. But as individuals, if you are grounded and founded on a savings culture, you try and avoid plastic money at all accounts. Loyalty cards are not bad, because often when you are swiping the money which you're normally spending, they're giving you back. And those loyalty cards are useful in terms of the points you get. Sometimes you can get fuel, you know, especially when things are getting hard, they help you out. I mean, I've had instances where I'm in a supermarket and I don't have enough, and I just remember I've got a loyalty card and I check and there's money there and I can use it to buy the small item I want. So they do help. But what we need as families is to sit down now and start saying, how wealthy are we? And wealth is measured in time. How wealthy you are is how long can you survive without somebody handing you money. And for many families, the sad part is not even a month. Some people said it's days. And we need to be in a situation where we reach that thing where wealth, remember, is 3 generations long. When you are wealthy as a family, your grandchild wakes up and is born into a family where they don't have to work. That is wealth. That is the ultimate goal. When you reach that point, then you can realize as a family, we have succeeded. Our grandchildren are being born, and whilst they're going through school, they don't need to work, because the ultimate wealth is time. Those who are working are simply selling their time, and the gift which we all have in equal measure is time.
All right, let's ask this question then. In terms of financial planners, let's assume you are one and I engage with you to help me plan my future. Is that a good idea? What is it costing me to consult with you?
Okay, a good financial planner will cost you. I think avoid financial planners who charge on commission, because if they charge on commission, they will sell you something. And often it's something which you might not have needed. So rather get a financial planner who firstly understands you, understands your needs, and yes, there might be a fee. I will not lie there. The good financial planners will charge a fee. But if we're talking to women in the Muslim community, someone from your community, there's plenty who understand the values of your community and your lifestyle. But often don't go for the freebie. The free thing actually comes with a cost later, because he's going to earn commission, and because he's only thinking commission, you're not going to leave his presence without him selling you something. And good advice often is sometimes, let's wait. With a lot of clients whom I see, it's a matter of it's a waiting game. I say, let's wait 18 months. Let's clear this debt problem. Let's do this first. And if you don't get somebody who's sober-minded, who's driven by commission, they will just want you to get further and further into these things. And it is important to realize that money is taught. Money is not something which it's a skill, it's a science. So always consult someone who knows more than you. There is no shame in the fact that you earn money but don't understand it fully in terms of maximizing its use. So understand that money is a tool. It's like a hammer. He who is skilled at using the hammer can use it without hurting their fingers. He who's unskilled will get hurt. And it's the same thing with money. Upskill yourself, learn over time, and it's okay for you to seek help, because often that person is just there to guide you.
Financial fundis often tell us that if you have any spare cash, rather than putting it into a special fund or whatever, pay off your bond. Is that true? And explain to us how that saves you money in the long run.
Okay, it saves you money because on your mortgage bond, and they give it to you for 20 years, for the first 10 years you're paying interest. So if you put any extra money into your bond, you're saving on avoiding the interest. So for example, the 1 million rand bond at 10% interest, if you pay an extra 1,000 rand, you cut your repayment by 6 years. Pay an extra 2,000 rand, it goes down to about 8 years. If you pay about 3,000 rand, you almost cut 10 years.
So that is one of the best savings then.
Definitely. It's definitely one of the best savings, because also it's an appreciating asset. And also what then it allows is that if you really do need money, you can get an access bond which allows you to tap into your bond at a very low interest rate. However, you can only do this, I would advise, with an advisor to help you, because it's actually a very dangerous thing, because that's how Americans ended up so indebted, because they started taking all the money out of their houses. So you finish paying off your house and then you start using up all the money again. So it's something which works. It's a strategy in terms of understanding how your money can work better for you. But definitely, if you do have extra money, putting it into your bond, even having a positive balance on a credit card, gives you a better interest rate than just leaving it in a savings account.
We've got about 3 minutes left. One final question as far as property is concerned. If you are still paying off a bond, but you do have a bit of spare cash, is it a good idea to perhaps purchase a second property, a property for rental? So you buy a little apartment and you get the rent, the person renting from you to help you pay off the bond.
Look, with rentals, as long as you don't have too much of a gap between what I would say with a second property, you must realize that if 3 months go by and you don't have a tenant in that home, be sure that you can also afford to cover that, because that's what kills a lot of people or hurts a lot of people who have investment properties. It's the times when they don't have a tenant or they have a bad tenant. Can you carry that extra cost? So often, before you start rushing into an investment property, be sure that in an emergency scenario, you can carry both properties from your own income, which you currently have. And yes, the rental income, if it covers the bond, why not? That is how you can actually start creating wealth.
Absolutely. Your take-home message to everyone watching, very especially the ladies, for Women's Month, what is it that they can do to truly become empowered as far as their finances are concerned? I
think with the women, it starts with yourself, then your children, and what will then happen is your man, your husband will then follow. I know it's difficult at times in an environment and in a world which sometimes thinks women can't do it, but women can create wealth. They control the wealth of the household. And even saving doesn't necessarily need to be money. You can start saving on groceries, because the amount you save on groceries creates cash, which allows you as a mother to put that money aside somewhere. So you shopping better can actually allow you to say, you know what, I don't have an income. How do I save? You can save by simply saying your husband gives you 1,000 rand, make that 1,000 rand groceries become 800 every month. You start putting 200 rand aside for yourself and show that you're saving and demonstrate. I think with children, they do as we do. Not as we say.
Absolutely. And everything you've spoken about this morning is definitely doable. We just need to apply our minds. Thank you indeed for a very positive message to the women for Women's Month. It's about saving and truly growing your own finances and the country's economy. Wonderful having you on the show. Thank you indeed.
Thank you very much.
That was Gerald from the South African Savings Institute with a very strong message for us girls about saving and how we can grow our economy, the country, and obviously have peace and harmony and raise very well-grounded children as far as savings and responsibility is concerned. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for being with me, and we do hope you've enjoyed it as much as we we've enjoyed your company. As always, take it easy on the roads. A big thank you from the Let's Talk production team. And as always, it is Khudafez from me, Julie Ali.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا 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 هلا